Hey coders, and welcome to episode 1 of our Compute Engine playlist on the Google Cloud Platform course. In today's episode, we're going to be learning a little bit more about virtual machine instances, how to create them, and how to access them on Google Cloud. So virtual machines are an essential aspect of Compute Engine. In fact, they are the main product offering of Compute Engine, so we should definitely take some time and review what virtual machines actually are. But first and foremost, let's get our terminology straight. When I speak of instances or virtual machines, those two terms are synonymous. You can use them interchangeably. Basically, an instance is just Google Cloud's way of saying virtual machine. Now, if you recall from the last episode, I mentioned that you can think of virtual machines basically as computers that run on the cloud. Now, a more expounded definition of that is that virtual machines are software computers that provide the same functionality as physical computers. So you're probably watching this video from either a laptop or a mobile device such as a phone. Those are physical computers. But I bet you that if you were to go and check out the available storage and see how much space you have left, you probably aren't utilizing all of the computation resources of that physical machine. Now I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a cloud provider such as Google Cloud. If you were going to rent out these computation resources through, say, a server, you would probably want to maximize the amount of resources that are being used before you go out and buy a new server to rent out, right? So how can you actually do this? Well, one way of doing that is to just invite everyone who wants to rent out your server to put their program files on the same server's operating system. And this is actually a very risky and dangerous way of doing that because you could have bad actors that put malware on your operating system, and that would affect the entire server. So you need some way to containerize your users or the people who are renting out your servers program files and isolate those containers on the same server. And one of the best ways of doing that is through a virtual machine. So on the right-hand side of the screen, I have depicted virtual machine, how they work. So let's just go over that diagram right now. So at the very bottom level, you have your actual physical server. This is all of the hardware that is involved in a server and all the infrastructure. Again, you're going to need some type of physical server, and that is at the very bottom layer. Now, above that is what makes virtualization and virtual machines work, and that is a hypervisor. Now, this hypervisor could sit as a software layer above the physical server's operating system, but more commonly, it is just you can use a hypervisor as the operating system itself, and when that is the case, then it's known as a bare metal hypervisor, and it sits right on top of the physical server itself. Now, the hypervisor's job is to create these new virtual machines and allocate the resources of the physical server to the virtual machines. So again, these virtual machines you can think of as separate software computers. And because of that, they can actually have their own operating systems. Now, for me, this was an incredible revelation because this means that you can have different operating systems running on the same physical server. So you can have one virtual machine running a Windows operating system, another virtual machine running a Linux operating system, and then the hypervisor will translate all of the operations that it needs to do to the physical server and then allocate the resources of that server to the virtual machines. So that is all I'm going to go into for virtual machines for right now. Again, you basically just need to think of virtual machines as software computers that are going to be running on Google Cloud. So the top 3 topics which we'll be going over today are creating a new instance configuration, and we're going to be doing a live demo where we'll be sending an SMS text message from our newly created virtual machine. So without any further ado, let's head on over to the live demonstration and see how to do these 3 things. This is the compute engine dashboard, and if this is your first time and you haven't created any instances, you will be presented with this screen prompting you to create a new instance. So let's do that right now by clicking on this button. And then that button is going to redirect you to the instance configuration page. And you'll see that you can create a new instance one of 4 ways. You can do it from scratch, you can do it from an existing instance template, you can do it from a machine image, or if there is a pre-made one on the marketplace that you like, you can just grab that straight from the marketplace. We're going to be going over all of these in later episodes, but for now, let's just create our very first virtual machine instance from scratch. So there's a couple things that you're going to need to fill out before you actually deploy this instance, so let's do that right now one by one. The first is the name of the instance. So you can give it whatever name you want. It doesn't really matter that much, other than that the name is permanent. So let's just say messaging, let's say messaging instance, and that should be fine. You can add in some labels, but that is an optional thing. And if you want to know more about any of these, you can just hover over the question mark. But the next important thing is to decide where your instance is going to be located, what region and what zone. And again, we did something similar to this in our App Engine playlist. So let's say it's defaulted right now for me as US Central 1, but I can always change that to say South Carolina or Northern Virginia. Now, some of these places have higher estimates, so like if we select Northern Virginia, that's going to be a little bit more pricey. So just keep that in mind, but for right now, for this demonstration, I think Iowa will be just fine. And now the next important thing that we're going to need to configure is the machine configuration. So we're going to need to decide what our instance, our virtual machine, is being used for. Is it just a general purpose computer that we're trying to use, or do we want to optimize our instance for compute intensive workloads? Maybe we have one for memory intensive workloads, or maybe we're trying to use the GPU, which is optimized for machine learning. But just make a close attention, or pay close attention to the fact that you don't want to select anything that is more than what you actually need, because the price might be higher than what you're willing to spend. Again, you are renting out these compute engine resources from Google Cloud, so that's not free, and they're going to charge you. So if you don't need a GPU, don't select it, because you might have a bill that's a lot higher than what you expect. Now, the cheapest one is to go to general purpose and select the first generation N1, and then select the F1 micro shared core. That should be just about less than 1 cent every hour. Plus, in addition, you get 744 hours every month for free. So that's pretty cheap if you ask me. But for this demonstration, I'm going to select the N1 standard one. And that's still pretty cheap. It's only about 3.5 cents an hour, but we're going to delete this after the video anyways. All right, so then you can select if you want it to be a confidential VM service, or maybe a container, deploy a container image to this VM service. But the very next thing that is very important is the boot disk. So this is what's going to be run as soon as the instance starts up. So in the boot disk, you can specify what operating system you want to use in your virtual machine. So again, you can do this via a public image, or we have custom images, snapshots. We're going to be getting into all of these in later episodes, but let's just use a public image for now. And again, like I said, you can select any operating system available in this list right here. So it doesn't just have to be Debian, it could be Ubuntu or Windows. We have Linux. You can't do Mac OS just because Apple again has that restriction that operating system has to run on Apple hardware, and obviously Google is not Apple hardware. But again, the Linux is very comparable, as well as other things such as Debian, so it should be very comparable. I'm going to select Debian for now. That's a pretty good operating system, And then you can select the version of Debian that you want. That's pretty good. You can select the boot disk type. So if you want a standard persistent disk or an SSD, it says right here that the storage space is much less expensive for a standard persistent disk. So that's just something to keep in mind. You get up to 65,000 gigabytes of disk storage, and you can change that using the size number right here. But again, 10 is fine for right now. This is just a demo. So I'll hit select. And then the next thing that you need to fill out is your identity and API access. So what do you want this virtual machine access to? So right here is our service account, that's fine. The default service account is fine. But, and then the default access is fine as well. That's just, the default is just read-only access to storage, cloud storage, and service management. But if you had additional configuration, you could specify that for these different services right here. But again, this is just a demo, so I'm just going to go for the default access. That's all we'll need in this demonstration. The next thing is the firewall. So by default, your virtual machine will not have access, or any incoming external traffic will not have access to your virtual machine. So that is very good most of the time, but sometimes you'll want to actually, say, host a website from your compute engine instances, and in that case, you'll definitely want external traffic to come to your server or your virtual machine. And then, so to select that you want traffic to be allowed into your virtual machine, you just check on these checkboxes right here that say allow HTTP traffic and HTTPS traffic. All right, by clicking on this right here, that's some additional optional configuration, and you can check that out on your own. But for now, that's all we'll need for this demonstration, so I'm going to hit now create. And then this is going to now create our instance, our virtual machine. This might take some time, so I'm just going to speed up this clip right now. All right, so that took anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, so not that much time at all. It's actually pretty quick, and now we have our own virtual machine created and the instance is running. So that's pretty cool. But how do we actually connect from our physical computer that we have to this virtual machine that's hundreds of miles away in Iowa, in some data center in Iowa? Well, we're going to need to do something called a secure shell or SSH connection. And if you're in the compute engine dashboard itself, this is a really simple thing to do. All you need to do is click on this button in the right here called SSH. And then once you click on that, then it's going to pop up this window and it's going to make the connection to your virtual machine. And again, this might take a few seconds, so I'll speed up this clip. And then once it's made the connection, then it should say connected right here. So again, this virtual machine is basically nothing more than just a software computer. So this is no different than going to your own terminal on your physical computer and then typing in some commands in the command line right here in this terminal. Again, this is just, again, a computer that's hosted now in Iowa somewhere. And when I first learned this and how you can have access to this, this is what blew my mind. I mean, this is what cloud computing is all about. Having access to computation resources and computers that could be anywhere on the cloud in any of the data centers around the world. And now you have access to that computing power all from your own personal physical device, which again, when I first learned that just blew my mind away, and how much endless possibilities that you now have. All right, so I hope that also blows your mind, but I'm going to exit out of that terminal and get on with the live demonstration. So we're going to want to use this instance to send an SMS text message to our phone. That's going to be the demonstration for today. So to do that, we're going to create a Python script that utilizes the Twilio API. So Twilio is a service that allows you to send text messages. Once you connect to their API, you can send a message. So let's go check them out right now. I'll minimize that window. So it looks like the first thing that we're going to need to do to access the Twilio helper library, again, we can do this via REST API, but using this library makes it a lot simpler, is to actually install the library. So we're going to need to use this command, the pip command, to install Twilio. But if we actually try that, if we say pip install Twilio, we can see that that command is actually not found because pip isn't actually installed on this virtual machine. So let's go and install that right now. By using this, it looks like to install the pip tool, all we need to do is enter in our terminal window for the Debian Linux the sudo apt-get install python 3-pip. So let me do that right now. And this might take some time, so again, I'll speed this up for you right now. Alright, so now that we have pip installed, or pip3 installed, then we can go back to the documentation and then install Twilio. So we'll go to our virtual machine again. We'll say now pip3, because we just installed pip3 actually, for Python 3. And then we'll say pip3 install Twilio. And now we can install Twilio. And again, it might take some time, but there we go. That was pretty quick. So now we have everything that we need to run a Python script with Twilio. So it's very simple to just send a simple message. It's just right here. So I actually have that written out in a Python script called send SMS. So I'm going to copy that. Actually, I'm not going to copy that. I'm actually going to directly upload the file right here from my desktop to the virtual machine. Again, I could copy it. I could create a new file right here by using the touch command. But I want to show you actually uploading a file from your own physical device. And I think that's a lot cooler than having to rewrite everything within the computer itself, or within the virtual machine itself. So there's a couple of different ways that we can transfer files to the Linux virtual machines. There's 4 ways you can do it. You can do it by directly uploading your files to cloud storage. You can do it by the gcloud command line tool, SSH in the browser, and SCP. But we're going to do it now the simplest way, which is SSH in the browser. So let's get back into our virtual machine. And to do that, you just need to go up into this settings icon right here. And by the way, you can do a whole lot more stuff with this settings icon. You can set the theme, such as this right here. You can do the font or the text size if you want to see some big text like that. But let's get back to business again and stop messing around with the themes. Alright, so to upload a file, it's very simple. You just click on this button right here, upload file. And then now we have our file right here. Let's hit open. And that is going to now directly transfer the file from our physical device, again, our physical computer, to the virtual machine. And we can close. And if we now say ls to check out the files, there we go. We have it right here. This was just uploaded. And there we go. We have now send sms.py right there. And we can just verify that it is indeed there by saying cat sms or send sms.py. And there we go. We have now this file right there, and it's uploaded. So let's go and actually see if this works. So we're going to need to say python 3 send sms.py, and let me just get my phone working right now. Alright, so here is my phone now, and if I hit this button right here, if I execute this script, then it's going to run. And now let's go check out the phone. There we go. We have a new text message. Let me click on it, and here we go. We now have sent from your Twilio trial account, hi from Google Compute Engine, the exact message that we wanted to send right here. So again, that is pretty cool. We just sent a message from our virtual machine using a Python script somewhere out in Iowa, and then that executed the script. It sent it to now our phone, and everything worked as we wanted to. So that's going to be the end of this demonstration. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something in this. If you did, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It really means a lot to me. Check out that Patreon page. You'll get exclusive access to me, and if you need any help on your projects, and I would be happy to help those out as well. So guys, I'll see you in the very next episode.